The rain had been falling for hours, turning the streets of New York into silver ribbons under the glow of streetlights. Keanu Reeves stood outside the old theater's side entrance, leaning against the wall in his simple black jacket, his hair damp from the weather. Inside, a charity film screening was taking place, a night meant to raise funds for children's hospitals. He had already done the interviews, smiled for the cameras, signed the posters. But now, away from the noise, he was waiting for some Yanea de Armas. Had been in the spotlight for weeks, dealing with an endless wave of gossip and half-truths. The tabloids had twisted her words, her kindness used against her. Tonight was supposed to be her escape, but even here, the whispers had followed her. He had noticed it during the event, people pretending to smile at her while their eyes judged. The way she sat quietly at the end of the row, avoiding attention. When the screening ended, she slipped out the side door. Alone, Keanu saw her step into the rain, her head down, the soft light catching the small tremor in her shoulders. She stopped for a moment under the awning, as if deciding whether to walk away or disappear completely. Her makeup, once perfect, was now blurred, not from the rain, but from the tears she had been holding back. She wrapped her arms around herself. The cold, biting through her thin coat, didn't call her name right away. Instead, he walked toward her slowly, his steps quiet against the wet pavement. She didn't hear him at first, lost in her thoughts, until she felt the presence beside her. She looked up, and for a moment, her eyes widened, almost startled. Then she looked down again, as if she didn't want him to see the truth in her face. Anna, he said softly, his voice carrying a calm warmth that cut through the chill of the night. She shook her head lightly, forcing a small smile. I'm fine, Keanu. Really, you should go back inside. He didn't believe her. He had seen that same smile in others before, people trying to keep their walls intact when the weight of the world pressed too hard. The rain dripped from the edge of the awning, ooling in small circles on the ground. He didn't say anything. For a moment, instead, he simply extended his hand toward her. Wasn't dramatic, just a quiet gesture, steady and patient. She looked at his hand as if unsure what it meant. Come on, he said gently. Let's walk. Her first instinct was to refuse, to hide, but something in his eyes told her it was safe to say yes. She placed her hand in his, and for the first time that night, her grip didn't feel alone. They stepped out into the rain. Together, the city sounds muffled by the steady rhythm of water against the streets as they walked. He didn't ask her to explain. He didn't need her to relive the hurt in words. Instead, he spoke about small things, the warm smell of coffee shops they passed, the way the rain made the neon lights look like watercolor paintings, the story of a stray dog he had once found. Sheltering under a bus stop, slowly she began to respond, her voice quiet at first, then stronger, until she laughed softly at something he said, but beneath her laughter was still a shadow. He noticed it, and he knew that tonight wasn't about fixing everything. It was about letting her know she wasn't invisible when they reached the corner. A small bakery's light glowed in the rain. The sign read open. He looked at her and raised an eyebrow. Hot chocolate? She hesitated, then nodded. They stepped inside, the warmth wrapping around them instantly. The owner, an older woman with kind eyes, recognized Keanu but said nothing, simply smiling as she handed them to steaming mugs. They sat by the window, watching the rain, Anna's fingers wrapped around the cup, her gaze fixed on the falling water outside. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. I know, he replied. But sometimes, the smallest moments can mean more than the big ones. She met his eyes, and for the first time all night, there was no barrier between them. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, a fragile but genuine warmth began to grow, and neither of them knew it yet. But this quiet walk in the rain would change both their lives in ways they could not imagine. The next morning, city woke under a pale gray sky. Anna sat on the edge of her hotel bed, her hair still damp from the shower, a cup of untouched tea cooling beside her. The night before kept replaying in her mind the sound of rain, the way Keanu's voice felt steady like a safe harbor, the warmth of that small bakery. It had been years since someone had made her feel like she didn't have to pretend. Her phone buzzed on the table. Another headline, another twisted story about her private life, this time using photos from the charity event. She sighed, her chest tightening. The comments below were worse than the article itself. Some people didn't even know her, yet they spoke as if they owned the truth about her. She put the phone face down, resisting the urge to read further. Gentle knocks sounded at the door. She hesitated, unsure if she was ready to face anyone. But when she opened it, there he was, Keanu, holding a paper bag in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. "Thought you might not have eaten," he said simply. She blinked, surprised.
Wow.
"Did you even know where?" He interrupted with a faint smile. "I didn't stalk you. Your manager mentioned you were here. I just figured you might need breakfast." She stepped aside, letting him in. The room smelled faintly of fresh laundry and lavender from the hotel's cleaning service. But soon the scent of warm croissants filled the air. He placed the bag on the table, unwrapping the pastries and sliding one toward her. "You don't have to keep checking on me," she said. Though her voice lacked the strength to make it sound convincing, he didn't respond right away. Instead, he poured sugar into his coffee, stirring it slowly. "I know," he said finally, "but I've learned something. When people are hurting, they don't always say they need someone. Why? Sometimes you just show up anyway." His words hung in the air. She took a bite of the croissant, the buttery taste oddly comforting. "You've been through this before, haven't you?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, his eyes holding a depth she recognized, the kind born from loss and loneliness. "Yeah," he admitted, "different details, same feeling. The kind that makes you think you're walking through a world that's too loud and too heavy." Her chest tightened again, but this time not from the headlines. There was something about his honesty that cut through her own defenses. A silence settled between them, but it wasn't awkward. It felt necessary. Later that day, they walked through Central Park. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and clean. Tourists wandered the pathways, children chased pigeons, and street musicians played soft jazz near the fountain. For the first time in weeks, Anna didn't feel like she was being watched through a camera lens. As they passed a bench, an older man sat feeding breadcrumbs to a squirrel. He looked up, nodded at them, and said, "Life's easier when you take. It's slow." Anna smiled faintly. "Is the universe trying to give me advice through strangers now?" Keanu chuckled. "Maybe it's listening to you more than you think." They continued walking, the conversation flowing more naturally now about books, about places they wanted to visit, about the small moments in life people often missed. But just as the day felt lighter, Anna's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from her agent. "They're saying you stormed out last night. Media's running with it. Call me now." Her steps slowed. Keanu noticed immediately. "What is it?" She showed him the message. He read it, his jaw tightening slightly. "You don't have to explain yourself to them," he said firmly. "But if I don't, they'll make up their own story," she replied, frustration breaking into her voice. He stopped walking and looked at her. "Then maybe it's time you tell your own story before they do." She stared at him, not sure if she had the strength to face the storm. But in that moment, the way he stood there, calm, grounded, unshaken, made her wonder if she could borrow some of his strength for herself. What neither of them knew was that the choice she would make in the next 24 hours would set off a chain of events neither of them could predict. And it would test just how far kindness and resilience could really go. Anna spent the rest of that evening pacing her hotel room. The city lights outside her window flickered through the thin curtains, but she barely noticed them. Keanu's words kept circling in her head. "Tell your own story before they do." She wasn't afraid of cameras or microphones. She had faced them 100 times before, but this was different. Now, her words would be twisted before they even left her lips. Still, a small voice inside her whispered that maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop hiding by morning. She had made a decision. She texted her agent to arrange a short press meeting, not in a cold conference room, but in the little bakery, where she and Keanu had sat the night before. She didn't tell him yet. She wasn't sure if she was ready for him to see the full weight of what she was about to do. When she arrived at the bakery, the warm smell of fresh bread instantly softened her nerves. A few journalists sat at the corner tables, their cameras tucked away for now. She ordered a tea and took a seat near the window. The first question came gently enough. "Anna, why did you leave the event early last night?" She could have lied. She could have blamed a headache or scheduling conflict. But instead, she told the truth about how the whispers had followed her everywhere. How people assumed they knew her heart without ever speaking to her. And how she had started to believe she had no place in the room. "I'm not perfect," she said, her voice steady but soft. "But I'm not what they've been writing about either. I'm just a person trying to do good work, and sometimes that gets lost in the noise." The room was quiet. No rapid-fire questions, no interruptions. One of the reporters, a younger woman, lowered her pen and simply nodded. When the meeting ended, Anna stepped outside into the crisp air. She felt lighter, not because the problem was gone, but because she had finally faced it. She didn't expect Keanu to be there. Yet, as she turned the corner, she saw him leaning against a lamppost, hands in his pockets, as if he'd been waiting all along. "How did you?" she began. "The bakery owner told me," he said, a faint smile playing on his lips. "I thought you might need a walk after." She exhaled slowly. "I don't know if it will change anything." "It doesn't matter if it changes everything," he replied. "It matters that you showed up for yourself." They walked again, their steps falling into an easy rhythm. But just as they reached the park, a small group of people approached. At first, Anna stiffened, expecting more whispers. Instead, one woman stepped forward, clutching a program from the charity screening. "I just wanted to say," the woman said softly, "my daughter's in the hospital you helped raise money for. She saw you last night. It meant a lot to her." Anna's throat tightened. She took the woman's hand, unable to speak at first. Tell her she's the real inspiration." After they left, Keanu looked at her. "So you matter more than the noise?" But before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression changed, calm but serious. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated. "There's something happening at the charity board, and it's not good. I think you're caught in something bigger than gossip." Her steps slowed. "How big?" He met her eyes, and in that moment, she knew this was no longer just about headlines. Asterisk, they found a quiet bench in the far corner of the park, away from the winding paths where tourists strolled and children laughed. The air smelled faintly of wet earth, the sky heavy with the promise of more rain. Keanu sat forward, his elbows resting on his knees. His voice low. "I didn't want to tell you yesterday," he began, "because I thought maybe it wasn't connected. But now, I think it is." Anna listened, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "The charity board is under pressure," he continued. "Someone's been leaking information, half-truths, twisted details, making it look like the funds raised aren't being used the right way. Somehow your name is getting tied into it. They're suggesting you used last night's event to fix your image while knowing about the issue." Her heart pounded. "But that's not true. I didn't even know there was an issue until now." "I know," he said firmly, "but truth doesn't matter much when people want a scandal." She leaned back, staring up at the bare branches above. "So this isn't just about my reputation anymore. It's about the hospital, the kids." Keanu nodded. "And that's why we can't just wait for this to pass." It's the word we caught her attention. It wasn't just her fight anymore. Somehow, without asking, he had stepped into it with her. Later that day, they went to meet someone Keanu trusted, an old friend named Marcus, who had worked behind the scenes in film production for years, but had a knack for uncovering truths others wanted hidden. His apartment was small, lined with books and photographs from every corner of the world. Marcus listened carefully as they explained the situation. When they finished, he tapped a finger against the arm of his chair. "These patterns to clean," he said. "These stories about you started right after the charity announced its biggest fundraising goal yet. Someone's trying to break trust in the organization and using you as the easy headline to do it." Anna frowned. "Why me?" "Because you're visible, and they think you won't fight back," Marcus said plainly. "Most people would just hide until it blows over. But I don't think you're like most people." Keanu gave her a quiet nod of agreement. Over the next few hours, Marcus pulled out folders, names, and connections. There were whispers of a rival donor who had tried to buy influence over where the hospital funds went. But the board had refused. Soon after, the leaks had begun. The more they uncovered, the more it became clear if they could trace the leak. They could clear her name and protect the charity. But it wasn't going to be easy. The people involved had resources, reach, and no reason to play fair. That night, as they left Marcus's apartment, the city lights reflected in the wet streets. Anna walked quietly beside Keanu, her mind spinning. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "This could get ugly." He looked at her, the faint rain catching in his hair. "Truth is worth the fight, and so are you." His words settled deep. In her chest, warm against the cold night air, and though she didn't know it yet, the path they had chosen would soon push both of them into moments where they'd have to decide how much of themselves they were willing to risk for what was right. The next morning, Anna woke to the sound of her phone buzzing again. But this time it wasn't more gossip. It was a text from Marcus. "Got something. Meet me at my place. Bring Keanu." She dressed quickly, her nerves already humming. Keanu arrived. At her hotel minutes later, carrying 2 coffees, his expression calm but alert. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together," he said before they headed out into the chilly morning air. Marcus was pacing when they arrived. His living room cluttered with printed screenshots, bank transaction records, and handwritten notes. "I traced the source," he said without preamble. The leak came from someone inside the charity's own media team. But they weren't working alone. He handed them a photo of a man in a sharp suit, shaking hands with one of the charity's board members. "This is Adrian Keller. Owns several investment firms. He offered the board a deal months ago, donation in exchange for control. Over where the funds went, they refused. Days later, the smear campaign against you started." Anna felt a wave of cold run through her. "So this was never about me personally. I was just the face they chose to destroy." Marcus nodded. "Because you were visible. Because it would distract people from looking at him." Keanu studied the photo, his jaw tightening. "So what's our move?" Marcus leaned forward. "We get evidence. Something undeniable that ties Keller to the leaks. If we can do that, not only will Anna's name be cleared, but the charity's reputation will be saved." Anna hesitated. "But that means going after someone with money, lawyers, and no reason to play fair." Keanu turned to her, his voice steady. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready. But if you are, you won't be alone." His gaze, searching for any trace of doubt in his eyes, but found none. "I'm in," she said. The next few days became a quiet whirlwind. Marcus dug deeper into public records and private whispers. Anna and Keanu began attending public events where Keller's associates would be, listening more than they spoke, gathering small pieces of a larger puzzle. One night, at a charity gala for another cause, they saw Keller himself across the room, confident, charming, surrounded by people eager to be in his orbit. Anna felt a flicker of anger, but Keanu's hand on her arm kept her steady. "Patience," he murmured. "We'll get him the right way," but patience would soon be tested. 2 days later, a new headline hit the news photos of Anna leaving Marcus's building, paired with a story implying she was working with questionable contacts to cover up the misuse of charity funds. The lie was sharper this time, cutting closer to the truth, just enough to hurt. "He's getting desperate," Marcus said grimly when they showed him the article. "That means we're close." Close wasn't close enough. Anna knew her name could be ruined entirely if they didn't act soon. That night, as rain streaked the windows of her hotel room, Keanu stood by the desk, looking over the files they had gathered. "There's one more event Keller will be at this week," he said. "It might be our last chance to get something concrete." Anna stepped closer, her voice quiet but determined. "Then we go. We end this." What she didn't know was that the night they would face Keller, a moment would come where she would have to decide whether to protect her own name or risk it all to protect someone else's. The night of the event arrived, the city glowing. Under a clear sky for the first time in days, the gala was being held in a towering glass building overlooking the river. The kind of place where every tablecloth was crisp white and every champagne glass sparkled under the chandelier's dot on a war. A simple black dress, elegant but understated. Keanu walked beside her, dressed sharply, but without the air of someone trying to impress. They weren't here to be noticed. They were here to watch, to listen, to act when the moment came. Marcus had given them one clear goal: find a way to connect Adrian Keller to the media leaks. The problem was, Keller was careful. Every word, every handshake was measured. Nothing he did in public could be used against him. They mingled quietly among the crowd, stopping near the balcony where a soft breeze rolled in from the river. It was there they spotted him, Keller, speaking to a man Anna didn't recognize, his voice low, his tone confident. Keanu caught a fragment of the conversation. Press handled the way we agreed. Next step is the board resignations. Heart pounded. This was it. She slid her phone from her clutch, turning on the voice recorder. But as she edged closer, the man Keller was speaking to looked over his shoulder and spotted her. His gaze lingered too long, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Keanu stepped forward, blocking their view of her for just a moment, giving her the chance to slip behind a column and angle her phone toward them again. Then, it happened. Keller's companion mentioned Marcus's name. He's getting too close, the man said. What if he finds the bank transfers? We make sure he's discredited before he can, Keller replied. Anna's stomach twisted. This wasn't just about her anymore. They were planning to destroy Marcus too. The rest of their conversation was short, but it was enough. She had it all on recording. She returned to Keanu's side, slipping the phone into his hand without drawing attention. His fingers closed around it, and he gave the faintest nod. They didn't stay much longer. As soon as they stepped outside, Marcus was already on the line, his voice sharp but steady as they explained what they'd captured. By the next afternoon, the recording had been turned over to the board and, through trusted reporters, released. To the public, the fallout was swift. Keller's name filled the headlines, not Anna's. The charity was cleared, its funding restored, and the board announced a new transparency initiative to protect future donations. For Anna, the storm ended, almost as suddenly as it began. The calls for interviews turned from accusations to admiration. She didn't do the press tour. Instead, she quietly returned to the hospital the charity had been helping, visiting the children whose futures had been caught in the crossfire. Keanu was waiting for her outside when she came out. The late afternoon sun casting a soft glow across the street. You didn't just protect your name, he said as they walked toward the park. You protected theirs. She smiled faintly. I couldn't have done it without you. He shook his head. You could have. But you didn't have to. They sat by the fountain, the sound of water filling the spaces between their words. For the first time in weeks, the air felt light. There was no crowd, no cameras, just the quiet comfort of knowing they had faced something bigger than themselves. And though neither of them said it out loud, they both knew that night. In the Rain had been the beginning of something neither fame nor scandal could touch.